What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by. Today's project is this Cub Cadet mower, and the problem is that it was running just fine until it ran out of gas, and after refueling, it starts and runs, but the engine revs up and down continuously. Let's take a good look at it, find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we try and repair this mower. However, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. I saw an ad for a free mower the next town over. I called the number and made arrangements to pick it up. They were giving it away because it wouldn't start after the last time they added gasoline to it, which is kind of what happened to me, except I have a running issue. Now I took it home, and to my surprise, it started, and I've been using it to mow my backyard ever since. Now, that was over 2 months ago, and it's worked great ever since, but it looks like the problem is now trying to come back. In those 2 months, I never bothered looking into the issue because the mower was working just fine. However, a couple of days ago, after running out of gasoline, I added some to the tank, started it, and this is what it was doing. So as you can hear, it basically sounds like it wants to die, but then it starts to run just fine, only to try and die again. Now this cycling is basically what it does when you start to run out of gasoline in your tank. To me, I believe it's a fuel delivery issue, as there's plenty of gasoline in the tank, but it's not getting to the engine in a constant flow. Just to cover my bases, I did pull out the dipstick, wiped it clean, and checked the oil to see if it was low or if there was any metal in it. And as you can see, the oil level is right in the middle, which is perfectly fine, and the color is only a little bit darker than brand new, so I don't think it's an engine issue. The next thing I want to check is the gasoline's condition. I know it's fresh, but I want to check to see if there's any contamination in it, like water or dirt. Now the easiest way for me to do that is to drain as much gasoline out of the tank as possible into a glass jar. So here's what came out of the tank, and by the color and smell, it is fresh. However, I do see some debris in it, which is more than likely grass clippings. Now large particles like this won't make it past the internal screen that's at the bottom of the tank, but smaller particles of dirt might make it through. The next thing I want to do is check the air filter, since it's on our way to the carburetor, and as you can see, it's in perfect condition. So I don't think this is our problem. That means we need to remove the air filter base and the carb so we can do an inspection. Now this is the first time I've ever worked on this type of overseas engine, and it looks to be a very good design. I would like to take more of the covers off on this engine to see how it all works, but I don't have time to do that in this video, so we might have to wait for another day. The most interesting part about this engine, at least for me, is the automatic choke system. Now this is a very crucial part when it comes to cold and semi-hot starts. However, after these past 2 months, I'm happy to report that I've had zero problems with it, up until now at least, but my guess is it's not the engine's fault. Even though we didn't find much in the gasoline that came out of the tank, I still want to capture as much gasoline as possible from the rest of the fuel system. That way we can find out what happened to it and try to prevent this from happening in the future. Now my initial guess for the no-start situation that the previous owner had was related to water in the gas, but I wasn't able to prove it. This time I'm going to make sure I find out what happened. Unfortunately, with all the linkages connected to the carb, you can't slide the carb off the studs. Instead, I'm going to remove the stud closer to the fuel tank. This will make removing the linkages a lot easier. To do that, spin one of the nuts on the stud facing away from the carb, then thread on the other nut facing the right way and tighten the two of them together. Now you can remove the stud by turning the inner nut. Once the stud is out, I can now slide and pivot the carb so I can remove the linkages. The only one that's really going to give you a headache is the choke linkage. The first thing I want to do is remove the drain bolt. That way we can capture as much of the gasoline that was in the bowl as possible. This will give us a good idea as to what was causing our fuel problem. Now, after looking at the gasoline, it looks like there's some debris in it that isn't grass clippings. This is more than likely what's clogging the fuel jet and causing our problems. The next thing is to remove the bowl followed by the brass jet and see if there's anything blocking the opening in it. You can see the brass fuel jet is located in the pickup tube section of the carb, and to remove it, you'll need to use a flathead screwdriver that's just as wide as the jet. If you use a narrow screwdriver, you run the risk of damaging the soft brass. So here's the fuel jet, and there's a hole in the middle of it that allows a certain amount of fuel to pass through it, but there's an issue. It's not clogged, but it looks to be partially blocked. What I'm going to do is run a wire through the jet and try to clear it, and then see if it looks any better. After running a wire through the jet, it's hard to tell that it looks any better. That is until you compare the before and after images side by side. You can see the opening was blocked by something before cleaning, but it's definitely cleared now, so we should be getting enough fuel to the engine and it should run like it's supposed to. I do want to take this opportunity to inspect the emulsion tube for any blockages as well, since it looks like trash in the gasoline was the reason for our problems. After taking it out and inspecting it, I don't see that any of the holes are clogged, so I'm going to reinstall it along with the fuel jet. Now, since it looks like the reason for our fuel problem has been solved and fixed, I'm going to also put the bowl back on the carb as well. Another reason why this engine would cycle back and forth from running to almost dying would be a clogged pilot jet. If this tiny jet gets clogged, your engine will run the way this mower was earlier in this video. The pilot jet only deals with air and not gasoline, and the hole is extremely small, so cleaning it is quite difficult without a micro drill bit set. Now, the pilot jet on this particular carb is located right below the idle set screw, which you'll have to remove first before you can get to it. Now, since I already found the culprit, which is the partially clogged fuel jet, I don't believe I need to remove the pilot jet to inspect it. However, if you're still having the same symptoms after reinstalling the carb, then this might be your issue, and then you'll have to remove it and clear it. Once the carb is back together, we can now install it onto the engine. Now, if you open your carb up and there's a lot of rust or oxidation in the bowl area, I would just replace the carb with a new one. These carbs are extremely affordable, so I wouldn't blame anybody that was having these issues to just replace their carb with a new one. It will definitely save you a lot of time and grief if you decide to go this route. I have heard of people replacing these studs with long bolts, but remember that the bolts would also have to go through the air filter base as well. So even though it would make taking the carb off a lot easier, it would make putting it back on a little bit more challenging. I'm going to leave it the way it is until I find a need to change it. Don't forget to reconnect the emissions hose to the air filter base, otherwise the engine will draw in unfiltered air through this opening. This will then allow dirt to get into the engine and cause extra wear to the piston rings. Now, once the carb and the air filter are back on the engine, we'll put some fresh gasoline in the tank and then try starting it, and hopefully it starts and won't run like it did before. So it started and ran just like it's supposed to, which means the dirt in the gasoline was definitely our problem. In the future, I might start filtering my gasoline out of my gas can just to make sure this doesn't happen again. Also, putting an additional fuel filter on the fuel line from the tank might be a wise choice as well. So my question is, if this happened to your mower, would you install an additional fuel filter, or would it be easier to use a funnel with a built-in filter every time you put gasoline into your tank? Or am I just being overly cautious? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope to see you in the next video.